Josh Gibson is here today visiting with us, the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. He's the county assessor, and we appreciate Josh being here today to meet with us and have hopefully an informative discussion about some of the concerns that we may have here in the association, and to get to know you a little bit better as well. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Why don't you give us a broad overview of what your department's responsibilities are and what your roles are, and then we can follow up with some other questions after that.
Our main duty is to have a complete appraisal on all properties in the county and to determine the fair market value of that. And then whatever values those come from may trigger new taxes. So basically, we're doing an appraisal to get a fair market value for tax purposes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And some folks, including me, have a hard time remembering what terms and phrases mean. Sometimes we talk about, the appraised value, the real market value, or market value. Can you explain the differences between assessed value and market value?
Yeah. And so, you got three main acronyms we use. Real market value, RMV, is basically what you would sell your house for or property for on January 1st of that tax year. Your maximum assessed value could have been when Measure 50 was voted in 1997, or if you've built on since then, it triggers new taxes. And the MAV, or maximum assessed value, is kind of like your ceiling on which your taxes are based. And then you have assessed value, which is either the lower of your real market value or your maximum assessed value, which was never really an issue until the bubble burst. And you had about 3 or 4 years of continuous declines in real market value until that real market value finally fell below that ceiling.
And what happens at that point? What happens to the assessed value at that point?
Your taxes get reduced at that point because it's based on a lower value. However, your ceiling is still up here. Your real market value could be here, but if at some point that real market value is a percentage lower than your maximum assessed value, that MAV kind of freezes. But as real market values are starting to pick back up, and now say real market value is above the maximum assessed value, now the maximum assessed value grows by 3% again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I understand. Do you see a relationship between the work that your office does and the real estate industry?
It's a direct correlation. Because we're trying to get, you guys are trying to sell houses. Mm-hmm. Fee appraisers are trying to appraise basically the same way we are. We're trying to get to that fair market value. However, a fee appraiser can pick from 4, 5, 6, 7 different comps, right, where we have to base ours on entire cities. And so where we take, say East Medford. It's a maintenance area, which is, we have 7 of those in the county. But inside those maintenance areas, we have study areas. And so those are broken down by what we see as like neighborhoods or like subdivisions or different areas. So say multifamily or condos or townhomes have their own study area. And so we have an appraisal on properties, and we trend those every year by the sales that occur in that study area. So let's take townhomes in East Medford. We have to trend the townhomes in East Medford by, say how many are there? Probably 250, but only 10 sold. And so we have to base those trends on those 250 by those 10 sales. And so we're kind of doing it more en masse than a fee appraiser, but there is a direct correlation between everything that we kind of do.
I understand. So that helps to establish a basis for discussing what the negotiated price would be on a transaction, mm-hmm, right? Number one. Yeah. And number two, it gives the prospective buyer some idea as to what the property taxes are going to be. That's an important piece of information in any transaction. Or what are my ongoing mm-hmm taxes going to be? Yeah. So do you see, you talk about, measuring in large, areas or by groups. Do you see areas in our county where there's much more volatility than other areas in the county, or by property use type?
It goes by area and also property use type. Condos are still getting hit hard after the bubble.
Hard meaning their values are going down?
Yeah, just continuing to decrease. Even with last year, where the majority of the county properties had either stabilized in value or were starting to go up, condos were still going down by about 15% compared to 2012. The areas like Eagle Point, Central Point, White City, the areas hit hard by foreclosures. Now that they're the banks have less of a role to play, they kind of got out of the business a little bit. You see those values starting to creep up again. And so those are probably the main volatile areas.
So the Eagle Point area is one of the targets. I had heard historically that Ashland was more volatile as well. Is that still the case?
They have a more strong real estate market than anywhere else in the county. And so where the bubble started to really drop for the rest of the county, Ashland still stayed strong for a couple more years and then started to drop. And so they've seen kind of the same drop, but they're still not, their median price is still higher than the rest of the county.
Okay.
And so, but they're always stronger, and their growth is starting to show.
So less volatile, less than the Eagle Point area where you see historically rapid increases in valuation.
The most of Ashland, probably on average 5-6% increase over the last year, where Shady Cove, Eagle Point, those areas grew by 14 to 16%. So,
and thank you for that explanation, because I always wonder about these things, and I just don't have a lot of exposure to it. Measure 50 was the demarcation for establishing a maximum increase in property taxes per year. I think it's at the 3% rate. So you've just explained that when property values go down, according to your figures, the property taxes would go down, but then once they come back to historic level, the Measure 50 level, then they could increase only by the 3% above that. Okay.
Yeah. So where we saw probably about 15% of the properties this year where they had saved over the last 2 or 3 years because their real market value had fallen below their ceiling. So I sent out a flyer with all the tax statements, and I used one of the Eagle Point properties where the last 2 years they had seen an 8% drop in taxes. And then all of a sudden, now you have a 14% increase in real market value. So it can grow that gap of 8% until it hits that ceiling, and then it starts growing. So you don't have that 3% growth in maximum assessed value. However, their taxes grew by 8% because they were below that ceiling.
Okay. And I can imagine that some folks may have been surprised by such a large increase in 1 year. And that reminds us of to ask you, what would be the process if a property owner wanted to challenge or dispute the tax being imposed?
What we do is once the tax bills go out, we start getting phone calls, we start getting foot traffic. What we try to do is if somebody's done, because the preponderance of evidence kind of is on the shoulders of the property owner, where they have to look at the listings, sales prices. If they have an appraisal, bring those in, and we'll look at the information that they have and look at the sales that we have as well. I mean, because we look at every sale in the county that has occurred. So basically, we're looking at the same amount of evidence, and we'll either say, yeah, we're too high, or we believe by these sales and these comps, we are going to sustain our value. However, as we get closer to December 31st, which is the appeal filing deadline, we advise people to file an appeal. And because that kind of extends their rights into next year where they can go through the process and go in front of the BOPTA board, the Board of Property Tax Appeals, and they can have their voice heard then, or at least to an independent board. But even between because they start meeting in the middle of February. So even between January 1st and the middle of February, we can come to a stipulated agreement. if we agree that the value needs to be changed. So it just, as we get to the end of the year, it's harder for us to do more research and to come with a more a good estimate of value, and it just extends their rights so they don't get left in the cold, I guess.
Right. Are you familiar with surcharges?
Yes.
Local governments in Oregon have gotten into the habit, if you will, of imposing surcharges,
Yes.
which appear as an additional charge on utility bills. Water and sewer bills now have line items added to them called surcharges. And those surcharges are to pay for local government services, and in some cases capital improvements that we're seeing now. What's your opinion about surcharges?
Well, my personal opinion is that I live in the city of Medford, so I have seen the surcharges on my utility bill, or at least I don't know if they've come yet, but I know they're coming. I see it as a fee or a tax disguised as a fee, and I believe that if a money measure, especially of that magnitude, needs to go in front of the voters, and it needs to be, if the citizens want it in, then it should be voted in. If they don't want it in, then government needs to figure out a different way to provide those services or provide those improvements. My chief appraiser said, because we're always looking at Jefferson or Josephine County, and they're in a much worse situation than we are. And my chief appraiser said, well, if you take away the services, eventually, if those services are needed, they will be voted in. And I think the power needs to be in the people when it comes to something of that magnitude to be voted on.
Right, I understand. A little while ago, we were talking about property taxes being an important factor in a decision to do a property transaction. For a buyer, you want to know what the property taxes are. And historically, property taxes have been used to provide general fund money to local governments to fund those basic services. And now, with surcharges being imposed separately, the prospective buyer is not going to have a full picture of the amount of money it's going to cost him every year. Do you agree with that statement?
I do.
Right. Okay.
I do agree with that.
And and maybe something that should or could be disclosed as part of a property transaction. Oh, thanks for the explanation. I appreciate your opinion on that, because it is a growing trend, and we're seeing surcharges being imposed now for capital projects, major construction projects, not just services any longer. So it's something that we certainly want to watch here in the association. There had been some discussion recently, within the last year, and probably working its way through the legislature. I'm not sure where it's at now, but there was some talk about eliminating the discount program that you offer. If you pay your entire property taxes by
get your 3%.
By November 15th, you get a 3% discount. There was a proposal to eliminate your option to grant the discount. Do you have an opinion on that?
I think it should stay. It's an incentive to, because the county is basically the tax collector for all the jurisdictions to get the money out, and they need money to be able to give out to every taxing district, and it's just an added benefit to get that money in time. Usually if you got taxes either wrapped in your mortgage, or you pay it either in your 3 installments or upfront to get your 3%. The mortgage is usually going to get the 3% because the banks don't want to pay 3% more on taxes. But those individual people that have decided to, I'm going to pay this all in one lump sum a month and a half before Christmas, it's just one of those added benefits that should stay.
I see. You're providing a service to local governments, and as part of that, do you charge those local governments a fee for doing work for them on their behalf? How much is it, and what is it used for?
No, there is no.
Oh, there is no fee.
No.
You don't charge an administrative fee to handle that. Well,
no, there's been talk at the legislature to try and get it, because especially the southwest counties, Jackson County's in a lot better shape, than a lot of other Southwest counties. You know, Curry County, Josephine, Douglas is in a little bit of trouble, to try and get as much as 2% back from the taxing districts as an administrative fee, but I don't think it's got a lot of tread, so I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. So.
Okay. There's also been some talk about upon sale of a property, to reset the property tax, the assessed valuation at that point. Have you heard of that proposal? Do you have an opinion on that?
Yes. And I don't think it would be a very good solution, because we're trying to get to this fair and equitable, everybody pays, the same amount of tax, where one house right next to another has two completely different tax bills, and that's not fair. I think this reset at sale would further that inequity. What really needs to happen is a group of all vested, citizens, cities, school districts, government, need to come to the table and figure out a solution to rewrite Measure 50. Because the problem is they come up with little solutions here and there that might, change 10 or 100 properties, but they screw up, another 10,000. And so they try to put little Band-Aids on it, where it really needs to, if you're going to do it, take a look at the whole thing and get it fixed. So,
understand. Okay. Well, Josh, we appreciate you spending some time with us today. It's been helpful for me as an individual, and helpful to the association. I hope that those watching will get an equal amount of value out of it. And thank you very much for being here.
Welcome.
Thank you.